Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
The reason we put off having these difficult conversations is because we're worried about offending the other person. And so we think we're being considerate. We think, gosh, it's consideration that is getting in the way because I don't want to offend or hurt in any way. And yet, to your point, in your example of your hair, the ultimate opposite of consideration is not sharing something with them. If we can make sure that the receiver of the conversation knows our intent, it doesn't make the awkwardness or the uncomfortableness go away, but it certainly helps us get to a point where we can start to really discuss and collaborate. If feedback can become the norm for both all the team members and for the leader, the outcome is a high-performing team.
That's Todd Davis. He's a senior consultant at FranklinCovey with over 35 years experience in talent development, human resources, and executive recruiting. At FranklinCovey, he's managed global talent development in over 40 offices in 160 countries. He's also authored several best-selling books, including Get Better and Everyone Deserves a Great Manager. So you'll learn 1, how to reduce the discomfort in difficult conversations, 2, the 3 steps to turn tension into progress, and 3, how to recover from the worst-case scenarios. I'm Pete Makaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Todd. Todd, welcome back.
Thank you, Pete. Great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk about difficult conversations. And I'd love it, for starters, if you could maybe paint a picture for us about the landscape or the state of play, the world of difficult conversations and their avoidance. What's the status of that today? As I have a feeling that's happening a lot. Can you tell us just how much a lot and what's the impact or cost of that?
Yeah, great question. I think difficult conversations have always been a part of work and life. But I think to your point, now more than ever before, with just the unrest certainly in the US, but around the world, our emotions, our reactivity is at an all-time high. And so I think just the crucial nature of how we handle difficult conversations is more important than ever before now, because people, at least in my experience, have more of a shorter fuse, so to speak. And so we got to approach these very carefully and methodically, in my experience.
Well, Todd, how about we just don't? Difficult conversations, by definition, are difficult. I think they may be unpleasant. Why not just skip them?
You know what? I like your idea there. And I have done that. And in the short term, that's very helpful. In the long term, it's not. I very quickly, several years ago, I had a situation at work with one of my team members. And just that, Pete, I thought, this is going to just go poorly and they're going to feel upset and I'm going to damage our relationship. And I let this behavior go on and on and on until not only was this person looking bad, but I was starting to look bad because other people could see that I wasn't, taking charge here and trying to course correct something. And when I finally did talk to this person, they were upset and it was uncomfortable like I thought it would be. But the thing they were most upset about was how long I had waited to bring this up with them. And rightfully so. They said, gosh, if you realized this 8 months ago, why would you let me look foolish for 8 months? I think those were this person's exact words.
Well, Todd, now we've got to know, what was the behavior?
Well, I want to be loyal to the absent. It was a team member. It was a personal habit this person had of being on their phone too much. And while they were getting most of their work done, there were other team members. And this was before the pandemic. We were all in the office seeing each other. And it was a less than mature behavior that this person was modeling. And it was really making them and our department look bad. And they didn't have a lot of extra time like others did to pitch in and help others with their work. So that's about as detailed as I'd like to go with respect to this person, but it was awkward at best. And when you're talking to somebody about a personal behavior they have, naturally we can get very defensive with that. So that was the situation.
Yeah, I hear that. And what's so funny, that notion of, but why did you let me look foolish for so long really sticks. I can recall a time I was in the office and I was completely unaware that, I don't know what happened. I put a sweater on and my hair got really weird. And I had multiple meetings. I'm thinking maybe 9 different people I interacted with over the course of several hours until I went to the bathroom and I looked at it, it's like, my hair looks so ridiculous. It's like, how long has this been going on? And how has nobody said anything to me? It's not just like a hair out of place. It's just like, are you going for a mohawk look this morning in the consulting office, Pete? And it's so funny. I love that reframe that, yes, it might seem uncomfortable, but you may also have something to lose by avoiding it. And the person is actually less pleased with you for having kept silent.
Pete, it is so true. We think about the reason we do avoid or put off having these difficult conversations is because in general, most of the time, we're worried about offending the other person. And so we think we're being considerate. We think, gosh, it's consideration that is getting in the way because I don't want to offend or hurt in any way. And yet, to your point and your example of your hair, the ultimate opposite of consideration is not sharing something with them. Now, again, easy if we're talking about hair looking out of place or somebody who's obviously doing some behavior on work hours that aren't beneficial. Harder when we see things a different way. A leader sees something, a different way of doing something than their colleague is doing it or whatever. And it's not as cut and dried as these examples. But still, if the leader will begin the conversation, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here in the conversation, but if the leader will begin by making sure the person knows, hey, I just want to help. Please know my only intent is to help you be as wildly successful as you are. I know you can be in your role. And if we can continue to make sure that the receiver of the conversation knows that's our intent, it doesn't make the awkwardness or the uncomfortableness go away, but it certainly helps us get to a point where we can start to really discuss and collaborate.
Okay, so we've teed up a little bit of the why associated with folks can get upset, even more upset with you if you don't tell them what's up and they need to be told. What is ultimately the outcome, the consequence of professionals and teams consistently having the difficult conversations versus consistently avoiding them? What roads will this take us down?
I love that question because I have been on teams before and I have led teams before where we have created a culture of feedback where it is the norm. And again, don't want to pretend that, I love it when people tell me things that I'm doing wrong or that I need to change. I'm not saying you get to that point, but if feedback can become the norm for both all the team members and for the leader, the outcome is a high performing team. I mean, if we have this level of trust where I say, gosh, when Pete shares something with me and it's different than I was seeing it, I know that he just wants us both to win. He wants this whole thing to get better. And if we can create that spirit of trust on the team where we know that nobody's out to get us, we're not feeling defensive or wondering what some ulterior motive is, the outcome is that we have probably the highest performing team in the organization. And others look to us to say, gosh, how are they doing that? And it's through creating this culture of feedback where difficult conversations, yes, are still difficult, but we assume good intent. We are open to what the other person has to say, and we learn from it, and we all grow together.
I like that so much. And what comes to mind right now is so random, is Mr. Beast, the top YouTuber. And whenever he tells his origin story, he goes back to, there are like 4 or 5 other YouTubers, and they just, quote unquote, roasted each other's videos day after day after day after day, continuously telling them all the ways their videos are poor and could be made better. And go figure, you compound that and he is the best in the world at that. So in your team, you saw they could become the highest performing. And yet I've seen the data suggest that a good majority of folks are not comfortable with having such conversations. I think Harvard Business Review had a Harris poll showing that 69% of managers are just uncomfortable communicating with employees, which is quite a statement. Like, that's sort of your job, is communicating with employees. Your whole job you're uncomfortable with. They didn't even put uncomfortable, difficult conversations in the mix with just straight up communication. So you've identified through your research the number one driver of this discomfort. Lay it on us, Todd.
Well, it's tension. There's something at stake. I mean, you think about it, Pete. Think about your last difficult conversation, whether it was someone in your personal life or someone in your professional life. When you really think about it, there's something at stake for both parties. If I've got a performance issue on my team, well, what's at stake for me as the leader? Well, that we're not getting the results we could be getting if they could improve their performance. What's also at stake for me is the nature of the relationship moving forward. I want to make sure that I get this information across, but then I also do it in a way that is respectful so that we don't have this awkwardness going forward. What's at stake for the person that's going to be receiving this conversation, hopefully receiving this conversation, is their dignity, their respect. It's embarrassing. I mean, we can use other words for it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how senior we are in our roles or how long we've been in the workforce. It's embarrassing to get feedback. It's awkward. And I think if these people that were cited in the Harvard Business Review, if they were thinking about, wait a minute, let me put myself in the place of this other person, that will help me structure this conversation. And first and foremost, I got to remember that this is awkward and embarrassing. So what can I do to reduce that defensiveness? And so I coach with, and we coach in our work sessions with an actual step-by-step. First of all, construct a purpose and an intent statement. What is your purpose? You want to declare that to the person. Well, I want you to know, Pete, I need to share with you something that I believe will help you be better in the role than you're in right now. It may be something that's not even on your radar, but it's going to be a little bit awkward. And please know that my only intent in sharing this with you is to help you be wildly successful in your role. I also, while I don't ever know how anybody else feels, I know when I've been on the receiving end of feedback, it stings a little bit. So I'm very mindful of that. But again, I want to reiterate my intent is to help you and the team be wildly successful. So are you okay if I move forward and share with you what I need to share? Now, I don't pretend that removes all of the awkwardness. But boy, is it a logical and a helpful way for me to say, okay, I can have this conversation. I now know how to begin the conversation and get into it. So that's what we coach in the work sessions. You start from this place of courage and consideration. Courage, recognizing what do I need out of the conversation? Consideration, what do I need to make sure the other person needs? And while we immediately jump to, well, they need to know what they're doing wrong. But before that, they need to feel respected. They need to feel whole. They need to feel valued.
That's great. So fundamentally, we got some steps there as to handling things. And then what makes it tricky is there's tension, there's stakes in terms of for you, for them, for the organization, the team. And then that fear of eliciting a negative emotion you've identified in your course materials as like the number one driver kind of at the visceral emotional level of folks avoiding stuff. So I'd love to hear, maybe before we even get into the how of the conversation, can you tell us, how do we feel okay enough to pursue it? Find the courage.
Yeah. Well, you talk up front about this mindset that's so easy to get into of, gosh, I'm just not going to have it. It's just, maybe it'll go away. Maybe it'll get better on its own. And while that can feel better for the short term, it's not what we call an effective mindset. Anybody who's worked with FranklinCovey knows that we always, always, always start with a person's mindset. So a very common mindset is, hey, this conversation is going to hurt. So no matter what, I just got to get through it. I just got to minimize the pain. And that's natural. I've had that mindset before. But a more effective mindset, if we can start there and we can realize as leaders or whoever is initiating the conversation, sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's the employee who needs to initiate the conversation with their leader. But regardless of who's initiating it, if they can get their mind around the fact that, wait a minute, I can reduce the pain and I can actually make progress when I'm focused on balancing both my needs and theirs. So we get in the right mindset, and that's all around this balancing of courage and consideration, then we can begin the conversation with what I already shared is first of all, stating what the purpose is, making sure that the person understands your intent, and then diving into the topic.
All right. Courage and consideration. That's fantastic. And I think sometimes we might find ourselves deficient on one or both of those. It's like I'm feeling scared and timid, so I'm lacking courage, or I'm mad. I am mad at this person for screwing this up repeatedly, or whatever the context. Like, you are mad about the thing. So you may feel a little short on consideration of their feelings and perspective and context in the moment. Can you help us? How do we give ourselves a bit of a jolt or a boost on these dimensions if we're feeling short?
If we're talking about a leader right now that's going to be initiating the conversation and who's mad because of the person's performance, I would suggest, and again, says easy, does hard, but I suggest we step back and say, what is my role as a leader? My role as a leader is to get results with and through others. My role as a leader is to develop others. So yeah, it may feel good for me to just go tell this person off and vent and tell them how angry I am. But am I really then developing and helping them get better results in the future? We define effectiveness as getting results in a way that allows us to get even better results over and over again in the future. So I might get the results of making this person feel bad and apologizing and knowing how upset I am with their behavior. And that'll make me feel good in the short term. But again, what have I done for the long term? So we want to approach these conversations, unless we've got the wrong person. Clearly, there are some times when you've absolutely got the wrong person in the role. And then, of course, that's a different conversation, as you're going to help them get to a place where they can contribute in a better way. But 90% of the time, we've got the right person or someone who can become the right person, but we got to slow down. We've got to have that balance of courage and consideration, address what needs to be addressed, but in a way that they can hear it, in a respectful way. I think all of us know what our tendency is. I don't know you well enough to know what yours is, but I know what mine is. Mine is to err more on the side of consideration than courage. So I've got to be mindful of that when I go into the conversation. Say, okay, Todd, you have a tendency to sometimes sugarcoat or talk around an issue, hoping the message will get through so you don't offend the person. And what I've learned through that is that sometimes it works, but more often than not, the message doesn't get through. So I remind myself of that before I go into the conversation to say, Todd, don't lose that consideration, but you got to be a little more direct with respect for that person. There are many people who are the opposite. Pete, you seem like a pretty mean guy. So I bet you go in there and say, I'm just going to tell them like it is. And it's good to be direct, but also, can I tell it to them? Can I initiate the conversation in a way that they can lower their defensive and feel heard? So maybe I need to increase my consideration. So it's the self-awareness of one when you're beginning a conversation like that. This is so important.
All righty. How about you give us a demonstration? We got some steps. All right, Todd, I'm going to put you on the spot with a scenario. Let's give us a demonstration of this in action. Let's say the scenario is we are peers. You are leading a project and you sort of need my cooperation to do stuff. And yet I am not giving you much of it in terms of I kind of show up to some of your meetings. I do most of what I say I'll do most of the time, but sometimes it's kind of late. And you would like for me to kick it into gear and be a dream collaborator, but you're not my boss. You are a peer. How do you work it?
Okay. Thanks for that softball. So I would first of all determine the right time to talk with you. And so we'll kind of fast forward here. We don't have all day, but I would probably take you to lunch. See if we can go to lunch together if you show up, because you're kind of flaky that way. And so we go to lunch, and I would begin with some nice icebreakers. And then I would just say, hey, Pete, I wonder if it would be okay. I have some concerns about how the project is going. And I know we're all, equals in this. We're all collaborating. But as the project leader, I have some concerns I want to share with you. We go back a long ways. We've worked together on different things for a long time. I have a lot of respect for you and your talents, but I also have some concerns about how the project is going that I really need your help with. Would you be okay if I share those with you?
All right, sure. Lay them on me.
Well, I appreciate that. So we've got this deadline looming in 2 months, and several of the people on the team look to you. You have a lot of influence with them. And it's been my experience, and again, I may be wrong. I don't think I am, but it's been my experience that you're not fully bought in on this project. And it's showing up in ways that are really damaging to the team. And I don't think that's your intention. But for instance, the other day when you didn't even come to the meeting for the XYZ step of the project, it kind of showed at least in my opinion, showed your disinterest. I hope this is okay that I'm sharing this with you. I care about you. I care about our relationship. I've worried about this for a while, and I haven't quite known how to bring it up because I don't want to damage our relationship. We've been good friends, and I'd like it to stay that way. But I also need to feel comfortable sharing these things with you. So I'm wondering, I'd like to understand what your level of interest is on this project first. And if I'm misinterpreting, your behaviors, I want to be certainly fair and respectful that way. But could you tell me a little bit about your passion or lack thereof for this project? Now, that would be how I'd begin the conversation, Pete. It would be a long conversation, but I would want to say those kinds of things so that Pete knows I'm not trying to pull rank on him because I don't have rank. But I really, my interests are in having the project succeed in time and our relationship.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. And so I'll just sort of step into the role and be like, well, yeah, Todd. I mean, sure, we're gonna be friends, and I mean, I guess you're in a spot here. I mean, yeah, that's not fun to hear. I do like to crush it in everything I do, but yeah, it's true. Like, I don't. I mean, I care about you. I don't care much about your project. No offense. I mean, I don't think it's going to make much of an impact to the organization long term. And again, I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know. That's really not my area of expertise. And it's also not really in my, quarterly or annual goals, this stuff. So it's accurate. Like, I'm not that passionate about what you're cooking up. I mean, I'm trying to be like enough of a team player to not just be totally rude. But push comes to shove, it's like the things that I'm getting evaluated on and my bonus is contingent on really do have my heart and priority. And I'm kind of done working to midnight as a lifestyle, which, I mean, it's fair. I could stay up later and do your stuff, and I choose not to. That is accurate. So yeah, it's kind of a tough spot.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for being open and honest with me. I appreciate the transparency. While of course I wanted to hear, oh no, I'm going to just jump in and I love this kind of stuff, I would rather deal with honesty like you just shared. So I want to be clear. What I heard you say is that on projects you love and that you're fully engaged in, you love the recognition and just crushing it and knocking it out of the park, and you'll stay up till all hours of the night doing that. But on projects that you're not fully bought into, like this one, or that you don't, and it's okay, we all have our right to our opinions, that you don't believe is going to make a difference, you're kind of pitching in to help when you can, but you're really not that excited about it and want to spend your time more focused on those things that are going to matter to your next promotion, your grade, and things that you believe are really going to make a difference. Have I understood correctly?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I would say that I don't care to stay up late anymore for work in general at this phase of my life with 3 young kids, unlike my earlier days, even if I am into a project. But yeah, more or less, that's the situation. Okay.
Well, again, I appreciate your honesty with that. While, we have different views of the impact this project will have, the deadline is the deadline. It is going to, I've committed that we will have this done by that deadline. Is there anything that I could do differently to inspire or motivate you to bring yourself, not working till midnight, but during the hours of operation and working on this project? Is there anything I could do differently that would be more motivating for you to dedicate more time to this? And if there's not, I respect that, and we can look at some additional resources. But if there is, I'm open to looking at things differently. If there's something I could do to inspire you to be more excited about this.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, motivation, I don't know. I could tell you that I get most jazzed about sort of the creative aspects of things and the actionable aspects of things. And I am less into hearing, meeting status updates. Some person did that. Some person did that. So I think maybe, I don't know if it might be hard to get much more motivation from me, but I think you could probably get more of what you need from me if you could just have a super tight scope in terms of, Pete, this is exactly what is critical for you and you alone. That is kind of motivating. It's like, okay, I'm the guy who can handle this. Other people cannot. So I'll do it, as opposed to, okay, you kind of need input from everybody on a thing to seem like it was inclusive. And I guess those I don't find as compelling. Like, the surveys seem sort of long and not targeted. So yeah, I guess that's what I'm thinking there.
Okay. This is super helpful as well, Pete, because at the end of the day, what I need is your creativity, your expertise. And I realize as I'm listening to you, I do tend to be a consensus leader. I want everybody to feel like they have input. And what I hear you saying is that that's fine, but you don't really need to be in those meetings or those updates. And that's taking time away from some of the other projects you're on and from some of the specific creative things you could do on this team. So what I'd like to do is think about how I might restructure this a little bit, use you in those targeted areas, maybe have Jamie come in and she can, in working with you, she would have enough of a sense of where you are on the specific things I give you that she can attend the status updates meetings, because it is important that we meet weekly and know where we're going. But what you're saying is that's not the most exciting use of your time or the best use of your time. So I'm going to use Jamie for that, allow you to be, and I'll be very direct and clear on setting expectations of what we got to have you do each time so that we're moving the project along, but that your time, maybe once a month, I'd ask you to come in and give us an overall update, but not on a weekly basis like we've been doing. Would you be open to us trying that for the next couple of weeks and seeing how that works for you and for me? And then we'll be both very honest about how it's going.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that does work. And thank you. I appreciate you considering my preferences. And I think that will work. We'll see how it goes. We'll give it a shot. Okay, Todd, that's really cool. And so what I'm observing here is that you brought a good amount of humility in terms of you're just trying to figure out how to make this work for everybody. And you're not like, listen, Pete, even if you were my direct manager or the CEO, it sounds like you probably wouldn't be like, listen, I'm going to lay down the law. You got to step up and like ABC, that's what's up, mic drop. But rather, it's very collaborative and humble. It's like, hey, I'm trying to make this work for everybody. I'm observing this. How might we find something? And so I like that a lot.
You're exactly right. And because, and you made, and it is difficult, you made the point a couple of times, we are peers. I have no formal authority over you. If you reported to me, if I were the one responsible for your next promotion, your next increase, while I would hope the humility and the empathy would be there, the conversation would say, you know what, Pete, I appreciate this isn't exciting for you, but I've made the determination that we've got to have these weekly updates. And I'm okay with maybe using Jamie to come in and give those a couple of times. But at the end of the day, I'm really concerned about your reputation. You are genius on your creative side. But if you're inflexible on how you work with people, that's not going to work for you. So please know, I'm not sharing this with you to be critical. I'm sharing this with you because I would hate to see someone with your talent and your genius get passed over for really cool projects because you're somewhat inflexible. And sometimes we have to work on things that we're not as excited about, but that gives us the ticket to then be chosen for other things that we are excited about. So I hope that my intent is to, again, reiterate, I just want you to be the number one pick for everybody on these projects. But if you're going to be inflexible on this, that's going to hinder your growth and progress in the company. That would be the conversation I would have if I had the formal authority. With their peers, it's got to be like I did before, in my experience.
Gotcha. That is handy. I feel the difference, and it seems appropriate in terms of, it's like, you're not saying it, but it's clear. It's like, I am the person who judges your goodness as an employee. So that is, because in a way, it's possible for folks to forget that. If you're too considerate and sugar-coated all the time, we can sort of forget that fundamental truth about the reality of your career progression. Now, it'd be pretty ugly to like stomp like, you know who I am and I own you and like whatever. But when you speak in the way you speak, it just sort of brings to mind, oh yeah, the context we're in is that you like, it was a little judgy. Like you said, I was inflexible, but it's like, but at the same time, you are the one who judges. And by judging in front of me, I am reminded that you are the one who judges.
Well, it's a good point. And again, hopefully would never use that language. And even maybe saying inflexible, I would soften that a little bit because that makes people feel defensive. But I would say it might appear to some that you're inflexible. I know you. I know how talented you are. But I also want you to know that in addition to being creative, flexibility is a number one strength that really successful people have. And when I have someone, and if some people think this is generational, I haven't experienced that. People of all generations might say, well, that's your opinion. And I will say, you're exactly right. And part of my role as a leader is to form an opinion. And so I gather as much information as I can. And I want to hear your input as well. But at the end of the day, I have to make a judgment call. So you're right. It is my opinion. And that's what I'm paid to do. And that helps, and again, always in a respectful way, but I'm pretty successful. You can be pretty successful at getting the message across in a good way if you use that kind of language.
Well, no, this is what reminds me. One time I was an intern and I was receiving some feedback and the context was actually unclear to me. And I said, wait a minute, am I supposed to be dazzling you? I thought the manager was making the and he's like, well, yeah, but like I am the primary input to the manager's decision and I would like to be dazzled. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I kind of thought of us as just like pals, like, hey, what's up? You know, I was an intern. I was just learning what's up in career stuff, but that was very useful to kind of recontextualize our relationship.
You bring up a really good point, because going back to, for your listeners, recognizing, do I heavily weigh more on the consideration side or am I more on the courage side? Recognize that, because if you're like me and you tend to weigh more on the consideration side, you can fall into that trap and you can say, gosh, I had this conversation, but she or he left thinking we're just pals and we're here to work together and I get to have as much say as they do. And so you got to be careful of that. When we were doing that, I really appreciate the role play you set up. That was really helpful. And there are 3 tools that I used in there that we teach in the Navigating Difficult Conversations course that I just want to call out. They were pretty subtle, but I've used them for so long that they come quite natural to me and they can come quite natural to others who use them. And that is to pause, observe, and ask. And what I coach people on, and what I remember myself, is pause, don't panic when we're talking, because you can see some new leader or maybe some seasoned leader when you say, well, no, I just don't like doing that. And go, oh my gosh, what do I say now? Just pause, don't panic, observe, don't judge. Even if I've worked with Pete for a long time, to go, oh yeah, this is the routine he goes into. Well, everybody's different in different seasons of their life. So observe, don't judge, and then ask, don't assume. And I tried to really emphasize that and ask you, so what I hear you saying is this, and what I hear you saying is that. And you were great because you said, well, mostly it's just this. And so if I had assumed, then I might have missed a couple of things that you shared with me when I was asking those questions. So pause, observe, and ask.
I love it, Todd. Let's say things go as horribly wrong as we fear. I love your take on what then. So let's say instead, I always think, Todd, that's ridiculous. I'm working my keister off on your project and all these other projects, by the way, which are on my evaluation critical path for reviews and such, and yours is not, incidentally. And I think it's pretty flippin' rich for you to make these heinous accusations when I feel like I am going above and beyond for this team again and again. And what about Mark? That guy's a real slacker. I think you should probably be taking him to lunch.
Yeah. And we're peers, right? This is still with peers. Yeah. That would be fun. I would make sure that you get the tab for the flight. But I would, in that situation, I would say, gosh, Pete, clearly I have hit a sensitive chord here, and I apologize for that. That wasn't my intent. My only intent was to see if we could make this work, because I need your talent on this team. What you've shared with me here is that probably not going to happen, that I'm going to get what I'm getting and nothing else. And if that's the case, I respect that. I don't have, nor would I take the authority to say you have to do this, but I don't have that. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to get somebody else to fill that role and free you up to do what you want to do. And I'm going to have to go back to Joe, my boss, and let him know I've got to delay the timing on this, because if you're unwilling, which I heard you loud and clear, and while I disagree, I respect that, I'm going to have to get somebody else to fill this role. They won't be as good as Pete, because I've worked with you before and you're genius, but I got to have this level of dedication. So thanks for being open with me and honest with me, so I know what my next steps are. That's how I would handle the conversation.
Understood. And I like that, because it's respectful and not just like screaming right back at me. And then I might very well say, Todd, I'm sorry. I just, I've got way too many things cooking right now. And you didn't deserve that. So yeah, I mean, if you could find someone else, that would really be a relief, if that's workable.
And Pete, if I can interrupt, that might be a way, and again, we're talking in hypotheticals here, but if Pete truly is this genius, creative genius, that might be a way for me to work with his, and I'm not trying to be manipulative, but for me to recognize his ego and saying, they're going to get somebody else here, and I know I could do a better job in this. There might be a way for us to continue the conversation after his blow up to say, well, wait a minute. I don't want you to have to change your deadline. I don't want you to have to, go to Joe and change the project deadline. So maybe it might be a way to continue the conversation. It may not be. It may be just what you're saying, thanks. Yeah, get somebody else. My heart's not in this. But it might be a way to continue the conversation after a blow up. I can think of several situations where that positively has happened.
Well, and I find that encouraging, Todd, that you've lived through several blow-ups, and it sounds like you're suggesting that that's not terminal. When the absolute worst case scenario happens, like it's actually not a horrific scorched earth nightmare scape. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. I'm thinking of one right now. We had a director, I won't say what department, and this person went through, I'm not kidding you, 6 executive assistants because they were so difficult to work with. 6. And I'm in my chief people officer role, I was over all of the recruiting and that. And finally, the recruiters came to me and said, we can't find anybody that's going to please so-and-so. It's just not going to work. And so I went and talked to this person, and I was respectful. And I said, I know you're frustrated with the talent that that the recruiting team's been finding, but I need to be really honest with you about what I've observed. And granted, it's my opinion. I did not have authority over this person, but I was the chief people officer. And I said, what I've observed, I don't know how to say this in a way that's not going to be offensive. My intent is not to be offensive. You are very difficult to work with. And every one of these people who have left have said that in their reviews. And they have talked about the micromanagement and the demeaning nature. And I know you, and I know that's not your intent, but I'm telling you, 6 people now have felt that. And I don't see this ever getting any better unless we can address that. And this person blew up like I knew anybody would, felt personally attacked. And I just listened. And 2 days later, I went back after them and I said, hey, wanted to check in with you, see how you're doing. I wanted to reiterate my only intent in sharing with you what I did was to see if we could get to a place where we could get you some help. And I didn't see that ever happening unless we could address what I've observed as the elephant in the room. And would you be at a point now where we could maybe talk through this? And we did. And we started talking through it. And this person actually asked me for some of the micromanaging behavior because they couldn't see it. And so anyway, long story, but we got to a good point.
That is great to hear. Is even when it's the absolute worst case scenario, it is salvageable and good things come from it. And maybe even better things. Like your relationship with this collaborator, this peer, is probably even stronger now for having lived through that because no one else found the courage to say what needed to be said to him.
Well, the people that quit after 1 week did, but they didn't count.
Yeah, okay. So no other peers or in the organization had observed.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic stuff, Todd. Can you share anything else you want to make sure to put out there before we hear about some of your favorite things?
As we've been talking, Pete, if I could only use one word, and this would be ridiculous, but in coaching people, it would be empathy. If we can, in any situation, not just in difficult conversations, but in any situation, if we could do a better job as a world, and I don't want to wax too philosophical here, but if we could do as much as we could to put ourselves in the place of others, not agreeing or disagreeing with them. I don't mean that. Empathy is not that. But seeing things from their point of view, we could have these conversations that are more productive. Dr. Stephen Covey, best-selling author of 7 Habits, and a man I had the esteemed privilege of working directly with for many years before his passing, he would often say the deepest need of the human heart is to feel understood. And, when I first heard that, I didn't disagree, but I thought, really, is that? And then just in my years of experience, that has proven itself over and over again. So if we can just slow down a little bit and take the time to understand, even that person who has so many crazy ideas, you're thinking, oh my gosh, how do they think this? If we could slow down and understand them, try to understand them, we can have a more productive conversation.
Todd's about to share his favorite things. And one of my favorite things is our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Harvard Business Review. This brilliant magazine, published at hbr.org, is the leading destination for smart management thinking. Fun fact, HBR has been mentioned in 108 episodes of the show. That's because HBR has great stuff that comes up often. They've got explainer videos, podcasts, real-world case studies, and much more. I think of HBR each night that I put on my special orange glasses. Their article, Will Blue Light Glasses Improve Your Sleep?, revealed that those who wore them reported better sleep and a 7% improvement in work performance as compared to those who wore the sham glasses. So I cite HBR anytime anyone tells me that I look silly wearing them. Now, much of HBR's content is available for free when you sign up at their site. Subscriptions that get you unlimited content cost $10 a month. If you visit hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME, you can save 10% off of that subscription. Again, to save 10% off of your HBR subscription, go to www.hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME. One sponsor to check out is Storyworth. Whenever I'm thinking about meaningful Father's Day gifts, Storyworth leaps to mind. Storyworth helps you preserve precious memories and stories from your father for years to come. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved ones a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick, such as, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? I personally love the prompt so much that I have refreshed Storyworth's questions page many times looking for more. Storyworth makes the writing process super quick and easy. All your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story, and then you get a quick copy of that. And after a year of this fun, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. Families love Storyworth so much, they've got 25,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot and have millions of stories preserved. So give all the fathers in your life a unique, heartfelt gift they'll all cherish for years. Storyworth. Right now, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/awesome. That's storyworth.com/awesome to save $10 on your first purchase. And big thanks to our sponsor, Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for your future. You don't need a lot of money or expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. NerdWallet.com, whom I love on these sorts of matters, gives Acorns a whopping 4.7 stars and says, quote, if you want to make the most of your spare change, there's no better place to do that than Acorns. Head to acorns.com/awesome or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. And we got a legal disclaimer here. It may not be representative of all clients. Tier 1 compensation provided. Compensation provides an incentive to positively promote Acorns. View important disclosures at acorns.com/awesome. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Please consider your objectives, risk tolerance, and Acorns' fees before investing. Acorns Advisors LLC, Acorns, is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorns Securities LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com. All right. And now could you share a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
I love this one. Leadership is communicating to people their worth and their potential so clearly that they come to see it in themselves. I love that quote. I try to live by that quote.
And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
It is Seth Godin's Linchpin. He has many best-selling books. And for those of you who don't know Seth Godin, he's a world-renowned marketer and just brilliant all-around. Great man. I've had the pleasure of meeting with him personally. And he's written several books, but he wrote a book called Linchpin, talking about, are you the linchpin in your organization? It's not about ego. It's not about hoarding all the information so they can never get rid of me. It's about, are you the connector? Are you the one that makes things happen? Are you the one that knows how to pull the right people together? And just the value in that. So I've done a lot of, I wouldn't say study, but work on that and coaching on that, helping people to become the linchpins of their organization.
All right. And a favorite tool? Something you use to be awesome at your job?
Gosh, a favorite tool. I'm standing at it right now. Long before the pandemic, our offices, back when we were in offices, went to, or you had the option of getting a stand-up desk. And I think I had convinced myself that at a stand-up desk, I would be losing weight, which isn't true, but my back feels better. My posture is better. And so I've had a stand-up desk for 4 years now. I had one in the office. I bought one at home during the pandemic, and I've just continued to use it. And I think and feel so much better when I'm standing.
All right. And a favorite habit?
Favorite habit. I have been I was going to say runner. I've been a jogger. And about 20 years ago, I started running marathons. I haven't won any of them, so I'm not bragging, but I have run 17 marathons. And I'm realizing I've been lucky that my knees, like many people, they haven't suffered from that, but I want to be mindful of that. So I started about 4 months ago. I read this article on fast walks on inclines. And so I have a treadmill and I have it at a steep incline. And every morning I get up and I walk 3 miles at a pretty fast pace. And it started to get old. So I started to watch a series that I had heard about for many years. People are going to laugh because I'm way behind the times, but this series called Suits. And that's my motivation to get up in the morning and watch, another 45 minutes of Suits every morning. In fact, it was a great episode this morning. So it's a recent habit I've been into for the last 4 months. And it's a great way to start my day.
You'll have to find a new series when you've exhausted the episodes.
That's exactly right.
All right. Is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks? They quote it back to you often?
Yes, actually. You had mentioned one of the books I was fortunate enough to write, Get Better, 15 Proven Practices to Build Effective Relationships at Work. I was driving somewhere and I was following a motorhome that was towing a boat, that was towing some ATVs. And there was a big bumper sticker on the back of this big train and it said, "He who dies with the most toys wins." And I looked at that and laughed. I thought, gosh, I'd want every one of those things. Those look like fun. And I thought to myself, you know what? I think he or she who dies with the most effective relationships wins. At the end of the day, for me, and I think for all of us, it's all about our relationships and about how we interact with one another and having those meaningful relationships. So the person who dies with the most effective relationships wins, in my book.
All right. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
FranklinCovey.com, www.FranklinCovey.com.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Don't settle. Don't wait. Time is short. We're reminded every day, I think, of how fast things can change. Here in the US, the bridge that just collapsed and how things can just change in an instant. So do it today. Start today. Whatever your passion has you going after, don't waste time. Do it today.
All right. Todd, this has been much fun. I wish you much luck in all of your difficult conversations.
You too, Pete.
I think my favorite part of this conversation with Todd is when he mentioned the story about his colleague that, hey, 6 people have left. There's been some feedback about your micromanaging and you're being demeaning. And I think that is among the most unpleasant, uncomfortable things you could share with someone. And he did it. And the result was he blew up, felt personally attacked, and then they're able to recover, repair the relationship, and they were better off for having done so. And I think that's super cool with regard to the fears that we experience, even if the worst case scenario unfolds, there is hope, and you may very well come out stronger in terms of that person's performance and your relationship with that person because you had the courage to share the stuff that was tough for their benefit with great intentions. Lovely stuff from Todd. If you want to check out a summary write-up of the actionable wisdom that Todd shared, sign up for the Gold Nuggets at awesomeatyourjob.com, which gives you those email summaries of each podcast episode as it goes live, as well as unlocks the whole archive, the vault of all 953 of these summaries. And if you want just the show notes, transcript, links to items that we referenced, you can find that directly for this episode at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP953. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.